Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. The Season 5 Reloaded update, of course, included a lot of different weapon and meta updates, various different buffs and nerfs to a bunch of weapons, and also the introduction of a couple of new weapons as well. And so with that today, I wanted to go through and break down the entire new meta post Season 5 Reloaded, what the absolute meta options are, what's more top tier, really strong, so close to being the best of the best, what's just more competitive, and then maybe what you don't really care too much about using that's more mediocre and below average. First things first, we of course got to rank our two new weapons. Unfortunately, with this mid-season update, not a whole lot going on in terms of meta competition with our new options. The Torque 35 and the Spear are much more gimmicky than they are competitive. They're fun mess around options, but in no realistic way are they going to be competing with those options in that absolute meta category. So we are going to go through and place both of these in niche, if I'm being honest. The Spear functions very similar to a knife would in terms of melee, but you can throw it, although it is a little bit awkward with the throw. The velocity is not all that great, so definitely more of a niche situation type weapon. Then same deal with the Torque 35. It could function as a sniper alternative, but realistically with its ammo limitations and you basically can't build it out with any attachments, it's more niche than anything. Now, besides our two new weapons, we did see like 20 plus new weapon updates, various different buffs and nerfs, and I've got my handy dandy list of notes over here describing all the changes so I can run through these and we can break down and organize this new tier list as of Season 5 Reloaded. So first things first, the BAL 27 ended up getting another close range buff, so it's now even more versatile up close. And I'm gonna be honest, the BAL 27, it might be a generous drop in, but I think this has a competition option for top meta. Like, it is right there, especially over range with these other already meta options like the MCW, the SVA, the MTZ, so on and so forth. Really, really good. Its recoil got buffed obviously back at the start of Season 5. It's better than ever right now, and I'm loving the feel of it. Now, both the DG56 and the FR556 ended up getting some slight buffs. The DG56 got a lower torso buff, and then the FR556 got a lower arm and hand buff, and then also a close range buff. It's solid, and they're better than they were before the update, of course, but they are not super significant updates, all things considered. And the burst rifles still don't really have a great place in the overall meta. They're usable for sure, but they're nothing too crazy. Somehow, the Holger 556 got another close range buff, so its best damage range is even further out now. Not going to be a huge difference, but again, technically it's better than ever. And the base MCW kind of got the same treatment. It got better close range and better mid range now, so it's just going to be even more versatile in its base form. Obviously, the conversion kit is absolute meta, but now the base MCW is becoming more and more versatile. I still think it needs one more long range buff to just be super, super great, but it's definitely, you know, trending upwards as it has for several updates now. Now, the STG, obviously a weapon that we all wanted to see nerfed, got nerfed. They actually decreased its max damage. It got a 4-point reduction. However, 4 points off from being the best option objectively is still very, very good. And so this thing is actually staying in absolute meta. Even if they obliterated its close range, its long range, despite not having a fast TTK, is still the meta because how easy this is to use and how great the velocity is. So while it doesn't have the fastest TTK at 50, 60, 70 meters, it is such a laser beam and so straightforward that it's able to compete just fine, and players won't stray away from that. So it's definitely staying in the absolute meta category. Now, the M16 amp also got a slight buff to its close range. That's a little bit further out now. Not something that's going to make it jump into absolute meta, but its slept on this thing is actually very good. It's got a quick TTK. Now, the Bass B has probably been a little bit overdue for a top tier jump up to be right there with the Subverter. When you compare their TTKs, they're actually pretty competitive, all things considered, pretty easy to use as well. And the Bass B ended up getting a leg and foot multiplier buff, so it's also on the up and up here for sure. Definitely an option that I think a lot of players have strayed away from, but really it's only getting better and might be picked up a lot more now that it's being buffed. Also, the Subverter got a max range buff. That's pretty much useless because you're not using the Subverter up close. It is way too slow for that. Now, we also saw several SMG updates as well. The Rival 9 ended up getting another range buff. It's actually had a couple of these. Unfortunately, its close range is just not fast enough. So while it has good range, its TTK in that range is still slower than a lot of other options, unfortunately. So still going to stick it with the competitive SMG. It is so close to getting bumped up if it just had a slightly faster time to kill. By the way, as we are going through all the the meta updates and breakdowns here today. If you enjoy the video, if you find it helpful at all, do me a favor, drop a like. It's always really appreciated. And if you are new to the channel, or maybe you have not subscribed yet, this is your one-stop shop for everything going on in COD. Obviously, we've got BO6 coming up, so much coverage inbound. You guys are not going to want to miss anything between the news, updates, and meta breakdowns, so feel free to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. Next up, the static actually got a lot of nerfs. They nerfed its mid damage, its max range, its closest range basically. It also got a mid-range nerf, a headshot multiplier nerf, and a leg and foot multiplier nerf. However, with the static, its TTK is still so good and it's still decently forgiving. Before, that one headshot made it absolutely crazy. Now it's just closer to these other SMGs, but still is a meta choice. It still has phenomenal range. It's just not as crazy as it was before, but for sniper support, for tac stance, for close range run and gun, the static is still a meta SMG, but there is more parity in the SMG category now for sure. Including the striker, which is really, pressing up against the static. It's pushing for that #1 spot. It got another close and mid-range buff. This thing's sniper support capabilities are crazy good right now. Don't sleep on the striker. It might become the #1 SMG if we see more nerfs to maybe the static and the supri potentially, or if it gets more buffs, which would be even better. Hey everyone, real quick, want to give a huge shout out to my friends over at Gamer Advantage. You guys know by now, if you're active viewers here on the channel, that I am always rocking my Horizon frames. These are by far my favorite frame style and fit, but they got a little bit of something for everyone. Multiple different frame styles and different colorways for all those frame styles. They offer prescription and regular lenses, so no matter what your situation is, if you're looking at screens for long periods of time, whether it is school, work, whatever the case may be, Gamer Advantage is a must-have. Reduce your eye strain, sleep better at night. They're doing so much for you. They truly are game changers, and that's why I'm wearing mine every single day. If you ever want to get a pair for yourself, throw in code Immortal at checkout, and you'll get a nice little discount. The link for that will be down in the description below. Now, this next update, one that I'm actually really excited about, is the Pulum Yacht. The base Pulum Yacht got a rate of fire buff, and then it also got a buff to its neck multiplier and its lower torso multiplier, and it's slightly faster with Sprintifier and ADS buffs. This does not affect the conversion kit, but the base Pulum Yacht, I'm not gonna lie, you gotta jump it up here next to the Eradicator, next to the Holger. This thing is low recoil. Now, it's super heavy. It is slow, don't get me wrong, but power-wise, TTK-wise, man, if you're accurate with this thing, it is crazy right now, and this buff just made it so competitive. It's a nice change of pace, albeit it's a slower pace, but ton of fun to use if you're a fan of LMGs. Now, the DM56, a weapon that just has not been that great in some time, actually got a max range buff, which is cool, but it's not really going to make it that drastically better. So unfortunately, this one's really not getting much movement here. The MCW 6.8, though, already a top tier marksman, actually got buffed as well with a better rate of fire and a lower torso multiplier buff as well. It's limited here because its ammo glitches out a lot with its 60 round mag not actually showing up in game, and it's semi-auto, so that skill gap is definitely there, but this is one of the best long range TTK options in the game if you're really good with semi-auto guns. So this becoming better than ever might be an interesting one to check out if you haven't messed around with it in some time. And then to close things out with the patch notes, we basically got akimbo buffs to all the pistols, and unfortunately they're MW2 pistols. We're talking the P890, the 50GS, the X12, the Basilisk, the F-Tac Siege, the GS Magna, the Damon, and then also the X13 Auto. The X13 Auto is really the only one out of all of those that I could see actually being a threat in akimbo, but it still has MW2 attachments like the rest of them, so it's a little bit unfortunate that it is decently limited. Also, while we're talking about akimbo pistols, the Stinger obviously got nerfed. That one's going to drop down more into the competitive area. It's still viable as an akimbo option, as is the Renetti, but definitely not nearly as good as it once was, and the Core is definitely jumping up into that competitive area as well as a semi-auto, but also with the conversion as well. But yeah, a lot of pistol updates, but I don't think it's actually going to change anything for the close range meta, unfortunately. Another thing that I definitely got to update is the Reclaimer 18. This is a top tier shotgun, absolutely. The build that we've talked about before with that potential 2 to 3 shot range, spamming it in semi-auto, thing is nuts in tac stance. But for the most part right now, this meta, it didn't change a ton with this update. Like, obviously this did not shift drastically, but what it did do is definitely narrow the gap that things like the STG and the static had on the meta. Now between absolute meta and top tier, it's much closer with the margins. In one area, if you're a run and gun player, you might want to run something like the Horus or the Supri for the better close range TTK. But if you're more sniper support, the Striker or the static might be more your vibe. Like, there's more options now than there were before the update, which is objectively good. I just wish we saw more significant buffs to really shake things up, because quite frankly, we're still going to be using a lot of the same weapons that we have been for some time. But that being said, that's going to wrap things up. If you guys enjoyed the video, do me a favor and drop a like. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button on your way out so you can always guarantee you're up to date with all things going on in COD. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.